I'm joined now by Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
So, Senator, we're speaking in the aftermath of a deal being struck between 8 Senate Democrats and the Republican conference here in the Senate to basically reopen the government. You know, a lot of us were hoping that the Democrats would stay united and not capitulate to Republicans without any assurances on Affordable Care Act subsidies. Can you give a little insight into what went on, I guess, behind the scenes that led to this moment?
Look, there have been for weeks and weeks a number of Democrats who, for a variety of reasons, I think, interestingly, they thought that Trump is just too strong, that Republicans were not going to yield. So they start off with the assumption that Trump can't be defeated, and then they look around them and they see federal employees not getting paid, Trump illegally withholding SNAP funds, kids going hungry, and they say, look, what's it worth? We're not going to win this thing. Now, I'm paraphrasing, and I'm not quoting anybody. That's my gut feeling. They thought it was a hopeless effort, and they kind of folded. Needless to say, I have a radically different approach. I think that Trump and his friends, while Trump may be crazy and a pathological liar, he is not stupid, and he's a good politician. He saw what happened on Tuesday night. He obsessively reads polls. He knows that the American people are holding his administration and the Republicans accountable for this shutdown. They are on the defensive. We have already had 15 Republicans in the Senate defy Trump and say, release the SNAP funds. People in the House are saying, you know what? You got to make sure that the ACA premiums do not get doubled. Okay, you got to extend the benefits for a couple of years. So I think that if we had held firm, it would be the Republicans who would yield. That was not the position of these 8 Democrats.
And building on exactly that, I mean, the reality is that we even saw Trump on election night tweet that it was the result of the fact that he's not on the ballot and the shutdown that resulted in this. We know that 2-in-1 independents were blaming Trump for the shutdown. The overwhelming majority of Americans were blaming Trump for the shutdown. And so how did these 8 Democrats who defected not see that the pressure was weighing on these Republicans? I mean, we got to the point where they were litigating on Twitter basically what a new healthcare plan needed to look like because the situation was untenable. And so I'm just a little bit confused on how those folks could see the pressure weighing so heavily on Trump, on Republicans, and think that despite all of that, despite the polling, and despite the election results on Tuesday, that the answer here was for Democrats to capitulate.
Well, Brian, you're asking exactly the question that I and other people ask ourselves as well. And I think all that I can say is that, not in their defense, that they look at the world very differently than the world you described. As I said before, they look at it and saying, we can't win this thing. They're too strong, they're too powerful, Trump won't yield. So let's, not have people not get a paycheck and so forth. That's their view. I think, needless to say, their vote was a horrific vote, a horrific setback, not only to the fact that we're now going to see, unless we somehow stop it, premiums, ACA premiums double, in some cases triple, for millions of Americans. Not only that we have paved the way for 15 million people to lose their health care by cuts in Medicaid, which is just an absolute disaster, but maybe more importantly, the message that came out last night is that some Democrats, and remember, 47 people in the caucus, 8 voted, small minority, that, all over the country, people say, stand up, fight, fight. We had no King's rally, 7 million people coming out. And last night was a setback. And I think people say, oh, Democrats in Senate can't fight effectively.
Yeah. And so how does that make you think about the new wave of Democrats, this new class of Democrats that's campaigning right now? I was looking at their responses on social media and, both candidates in Maine, all 3 candidates in Michigan, Minnesota, both candidates in Minnesota, like all across the country, there was scorn for what had happened at the hands of these 8 Democrats.
What about the candidates in New Hampshire? Jeanne Shaheen's own daughter.
Yeah, I actually hadn't even seen that one.
Yeah, her own daughter who's running for Congress. disagreed with the mother on that.
Yeah. And so how does that make you think about this next class of Democrats in terms of filling a void that we're very clearly seeing right now at the hands of Democrats who don't recognize this moment?
Look, in my view, the Democratic leadership is way out of touch with where the Democratic base is and where the American people are at. That's why I am working as hard as I can to elect a whole new crop of senators and members of the House. We've had good luck in the past in the House, not so much in the Senate, but right now we have at least 3 candidates. In Minnesota today, Peggy Flanagan, Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, and Grant Plattner in Maine. All of them, if elected to the Senate, will come in, be prepared to take on the oligarchs, be prepared to fight for Medicare for all, be prepared to demand that the billionaire class start paying their fair share of taxes, etc. So that's the kind of change that we need, and that's what I'm fighting for.
In terms of the ACA specifically, one of, I guess, the concession that was made by Republicans is that there would be a vote on the ACA. But this vote, because it's regular order, it's not something that could pass through reconciliation. It's not something where the filibuster wouldn't apply. That would need 60 votes to pass out of the Senate. Democrats have 43 members, or 47 members, which means that we need 13 Republicans to defect. Do you have any confidence that there would be 13 Republicans who would recognize the need to extend the ACA subsidies?
Brian, it is worse than that. Number one, there may be a few Republicans who would vote for it. I don't think 13 would, but it doesn't matter. Even if by some miracle you got 60 votes, where do you think that amendment would go? No, nowhere.
Right.
Speaker Johnson has made it very clear that he's not going to entertain it. Trump would never sign it. So it is an empty gesture, and that bothers me. It bothers me that people want to raise false hopes. Oh, we're going to bring forth an amendment. That amendment ain't going to go anyplace, period. End of discussion.
In terms of finding some silver lining on that point, is there some consolation in the fact that now that amendment will go up for basically, a clean vote where people are able to see exactly where the Republicans stand on either extending or refusing to extend the ACA subsidies. And so from a political messaging perspective, at a bare minimum, it makes it clear who's supporting this stuff and who's opposing it.
Well, the answer is, let me give you a firm political answer, yes and no. All right. And that is, yeah. Although I think most Americans who follow this thing already know what's going on. Right. But by the way, in a few hours, what time is it now? I think in an hour or so, Tammy Baldwin and I will be on the floor doing more or less just that, and we'll get a vote. There'll be a motion to proceed to extend for a vote to extend the ACA tax credits for another year. My guess is not one Republican will vote for it. So you're going to have a very similar vote literally within an hour, I think.
And so what would your message be to folks around the country, who kind of have endured the whiplash of, on one hand, seeing the election results that we saw this past Tuesday, and yet watching what happened this week in terms of the Democrats, those 8 Democrats caving to the Republicans?
Weighing the two developments, the election and the cave-in of 8 Democrats, the election is far, far more important. Look, the Democratic establishment, in my view, including many of these moderate Democrats, are way out of touch. And I would say that even if you look at the states that these guys come from, Maine, New Hampshire, the candidates who are running right now, who are in touch with voters every single day, trying to get elected, they are saying this was a sellout.
Right.
But what I think we should not underestimate is that we just had an election on Tuesday. And all over this country, Brian, and it was really quite extraordinary, much more positive than I think any of us anticipated. In small towns, all over New Jersey, small towns in Connecticut, I'm sorry, in California, in New York City, in Virginia, in New Jersey, all over this country, small towns, large cities, states, people said no to Trumpism, big time. Okay, young people began to come out and express their views. So what we have got to do is go above and beyond what happened yesterday, that terrible, terrible vote, and understand that, yes, you have parts of the Democratic establishment who are way, way out of touch with where the American people are or where we have got to go. And our job is to build a political movement. We are doing it with the 3 candidates for the Senate. I expect more to come with many candidates in the House, candidates all over this country running for local office. We're going to build that movement, grassroots movement, to do what Mamdani did in New York City, all over this country, and create a government that works for everybody, not just the billionaire class.
Last question, Senator Sanders. We were in this situation where we were contending with the prospect of 42 million Americans losing their food assistance and 24 million Americans watching their healthcare premiums double, triple, quadruple, or more because Republicans decided to pit the sick against the hungry as a way to negotiate their way through this shutdown. And so what does it say that those were the hostages that they were willing to take, that the party of family values, the pro-children family party, decided to, again, pit the sick against the hungry as a way to get out of this shutdown?
It is disgusting. It is disgusting. And in terms of SNAP, the idea that a president of the United States, as you know, Congress had appropriated over $5 billion very specifically, explicitly, in case there's a government shutdown, don't stop the funding. Here's over $5 billion.
Right.
And Trump acts illegally, totally illegally. You know, one day he says he's stopping, and the next day he's going forward, and he goes to the courts. The idea that you have a president of the United States, a leader of this country, is willing to see children go hungry is despicable, And again, I think people, Republicans, a lot of Republicans are on SNAP programs. You know, their kids are on. They see it. And, I think that is one of the reasons why Democrats did so well on Tuesday. And we got to keep up the fight.
We'll leave it there. Senator Sanders, thank you, as always, for the moral clarity and for the time today.
Thank you very much.